Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lit in English. It has been a
Oh, I
while,
remember.
but we are going to start this journey. Let me just making sure that everyone can hear me okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. Well, welcome everyone. So we are back with another episode of Lit in English, and today I have a very special episode on compassion. We have never had this sharing before in the past, and I hope that you can learn some great lesson for today. And before we start, I would like to send my gratitude to my teachers, my many of the wise men that have shared with us many great lessons. And this is the journey we are going on to help spread the amazing knowledge, not only to help the person next to us, but this is a great reminder for us to relearn and practice these amazing knowledge, which will in turn make our life much better and much more wonderful. And once again, thank you very much for joining us today. All right, so let's get right to it. And I would try to have uh, a presentation like this every every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 12 p.m. Lunchtime in Vietnamese time. And let's try to have this every week. So once again, thanks for joining me. All right. So the topic today is compassion, and this is the time that I would like to invite you to draw with me. And let's start with the word compassion. Um, so compassion is the one word that I hear a lot in the past, but I didn't really know what it means. And the word compassion is the one word I often hear from, like, let's say, a monk or a priest. And all of the successful people in the world, they highly respected a person with compassion. So the general term of compassion is to have compassion toward other people where we can feel related to other people. But the meaning of compassion that we are going to explore today will have a much deeper meaning, much deeper understanding that can help guide us in our journey. So, in order to truly understand what compassion means, we have to first understand what forgiveness means, because there's different level to forgiving, to compassion. So the first level that most of us are familiar with is forgiveness. Forgiveness. And it is pretty simple. If someone was to do something wrong to us and we learn how to forgive them, that is the most common term that we are given. And then another level above forgiveness is tolerance. So when I hear the word tolerance, I I automatically thinking about uh, like drinking beer, for example, like a person with high tolerance would be the person who can drink more alcohol without getting drunk. But tolerance in this term is simply mean that you have high tolerance, as in other people might do something mean to you, but it is harder for you to get mad at them. So it's just another expression for a forgiving person. And then another level above tolerance that I would like to introduce to you is altruism. So altruism is the type of people who learn to forgive other. They are always looking at the best possible scenario, and it is their practice to find the good in people. All right. So all of the definition that I shared with you just now is actually common knowledge when it's come to these words. But for the purpose of today's sharing, we we are borrowing these terms so that we can truly understand what it means to be a forgiven person, what it means to have the tolerant characteristic, what does it mean to have an altruism uh, tied up character, and what does it mean to have a uh, a character of virtue of compassion. So let's dive in deeper and explore what forgiveness actually mean. And we're gonna go back to this paper very quickly. And today we are going to dive in many of the definition. All right. Okay. So first thing first, forgiveness. Forgiveness. And I would like to call this a person with a virtue of forgiveness. So virtue is a character that is highly looked after. So a person with the virtue of forgiveness is the type of person that when people make 10 part of fault, then in some way the fault had diminished and it's only affect that person with forgiveness. It's only affect 6 to 7 portion. And then over time, the other faults continue to diminish to 4 to 5 portion. And the point here is that the other person fault are still below average, and we almost think that the other person fault no longer exists. But when the fault are repeated for a few more times, then the emotion will rise up. So the essence of forgiveness is still contain some of the other person fault. So let's draw it out so that we have a better understanding. So when someone do something wrong to us, let's we call that people fault, as in other people fault. And let's say this is 10 part, as in 10 out of 10. All right. So someone doing something wrong, and that will have some kind of effect on us. This is me, or this is you. But let's just go ahead and write the words me to represent that other people thought have some effect on us. For example, let's say they just say something mean, so that will affect us 10 part, all 10 of it has great influence. But over time, so at first we feel all of it, but over time, then the people thought resign in me only have 6 to 7 part. So this is the characteristic of a person with a virtue of forgiveness. And this is a foundational, a very foundational definition that we need to understand. Oh, Jasmine just said, oh, altruism. Yep, I will fix that in a little bit. Thank you. All right. So, okay, so this is the very foundational definition for forgiveness. Okay, in the past, when someone do something wrong to us, let's say someone just forget to like wash the dishes, for example. Let's say someone in your family member promised that they would clean the dishes, but they didn't. And that 10 part will be their fault. And that affect us because we expect the dishes to be clean, but it is not. So at that time when the event happened, all 10 part of the people fault, we feel it. But over time, given it some time, then those 10 part diminish and it's only have 6 to 7 part. When we are reminded of it, when we get reminded of the situation, we no longer feel as upset or as angry as when it first occurred. We only feel 6 or 7 part of the 10 part. And that is a very important definition of forgiveness. And we need to understand this because when we say that we forgive other people, you know, it might appear like we have forgiven them, that all is done, but it is not. We have to understand that deep down, when the situation occurred again, or when we are reminded of it, we still have the impression that that particular event was their fault. All right. So let's move on to a higher level of forgiving, which is tolerance. And let me go ahead and fix the word eyes before the S here, just so I can remember. The next one I would like you to write the word tolerance. Let's get the first. So I would like you to invite you to write the word tolerance. Tolerance. So it will be very similar to what we did earlier. If someone were to do something wrong to us, and 10 out of 10 of the part of people fault. And that will affect us, affect me. But over time, the people fault reside in me. Okay, so the difference between tolerance and forgiveness is that when someone do something wrong to us, there are 10 part, and over time, there are only 6 and 7 part that reside in us, that's remain in us. But for tolerance, when someone doing something wrong to us, we are tolerant toward the wrongdoing. Therefore, the 10 part of people fault it does not affect us 10 part because of the tolerance. There we only feel 6 to 7 part. And let's use the dishwashing example earlier. A tolerant person, instead of blaming 100% on their family member who didn't do the dishes, instead they might think that, oh, that person, maybe they have to do their homework, or they have to take care of their job, and we are more forgiving. So automatically, when someone do something wrong, we don't feel the full effect of it. We only feel 6 to 7 part. And the beautiful thing about it is over time, let's say 5 days later or a week later, the feeling, the energy of the people thought reside in us, in me, is only half 4 to 5 part. So similarly, what if we have a person with the the virtue of altruism? So let me go ahead and write the word altruism down here so we can save some space, and hopefully this will make more sense. Altruism. So altruism is the type of people who look into understand where other person is coming from so that they can relate to the other person behavior. So when using the dishwashing example, let's say when our family member did not do the dishes as they promised, an altruism person will only feel the people fault is only have the effect of 4 to 5 part. And then over time, because such a beautiful and powerful forgiving characteristic, altruism person only feel there's only over time there's only 1 to 2 part of other people fault that would affect us. Now, this is very important because understanding the development from forgiveness to tolerance to altruism, this will help us understand what compassion means. Okay. So let me repeat. A person with the virtue of forgiveness is if the other person make 10 part of fault, in some way their fault had diminished over time. In fact, the people fault reside in us get reduced to 6 to 7 part. And this is the most common type of forgiving. But a tolerant person, the person with the virtue of tolerance, if the other person make 10 part of fault, then some ways only affect 6 to 7 part. And then over time, it's get reduced to only 4 to 5 part. So instead of affecting all 10, it has gotten reduced to 6 and 7, and then over time, there's only 4 and 5. And altruism, a person with the virtue of altruism is if the other person make 10 part of fault, it's only affect 4 to 5 part. It's got reduced in half right away. And over time, unless they get reminded of the mistake, they don't even remember. They only remember 1 to 2 part. So an altruism is appearing to be in the highest of the pyramid. But what's special is a person with compassion characteristic. And a person with the virtue of compassion is completely different compared to the other three. Because if other person make 10 part of fault, this one, actually, let me draw it out so it will be a little bit clearer. So compassion is very, very unique because for compassion, if we have 10 part of people's fault. And the effect that it will have on me will be absolutely zero. There will be no effect at all. Right? So this is literally the definition of compassion itself. A person with the virtue of compassion is completely different. If the other person makes 10 part of fault, none of those fault affect the person at all. The essence of compassion is that it does not contain the other faults. It is respect, understanding, and acceptance. So instead of forgiveness, when someone doing something wrong, we recognize it right away and we find a way to forgive them. Eventually, we learn that we need to be tolerant. We need to understand other people's perspective, right? And over time, that got reduced. Same for autism. When someone do something wrong, we still recognize it. We might be forgiving right away to the action, but over time, it's almost like non-existent. So the very definition show us that compassion is very, very unique in and of itself. Because regardless what other person does, it does not affect us. We don't even see it as a wrongdoing. And when I first heard of this definition is very hard to accept because the definition in itself tell us that the other person, they are it's not their fault. It doesn't matter what they do, it was not their fault. And I was having a very, very hard time to understand it. Like how is it not their that how is it that it is not their fault? Right? Let's say if a person is going late to work, then they have all the choices that they can make to avoid being late. Therefore, if that person is late, then it has to be their fault. So that was my mentality prior to learning about compassion. And this topic is big, by the way. So if anybody have any question or if you want to interact, we can definitely could learn about the topic compassion. So at first, it was difficult for me to accept the definition of compassion, of having no effect, having no negative effect on us when somebody is doing something wrong. And later on in life, I realized that when someone is doing something wrong, they are actually in the situation where they have to do it that way. For example, um, when I am late to work, I it was often because of the traffic, because the traffic is unpredictable. There might be a car accident that happened to block the roadway. And I am the person who all the way go to work early, all the way go to work at least 15 minutes ahead of the starting time. But there are days that traffic happen and I would be late and I would be doing something wrong. But because, let's say, my boss know that I always go there early, they they would feel the tolerance because they still see the fault in me. They still recognize that I was late. But deep down, it wasn't my fault. It was because of the traffic. So if my boss were to know me well, he would have compassion. He would have the trust, he would have the love, and he wouldn't even see the situation as my fault. He would know, and he would make the assumption that it was because of the traffic. So having compassion is kind of like in that sense, but the important compassion had a much deeper meaning. And in order to demonstrate that meaning, I would like to tell you a very powerful story that I I learned from my teacher. So the story is about a girl. So there was a girl, and she has a very strange illness with an unknown cause, and her health and strength gradually declined. And the weird thing is, she keep having the same strange dream every day, and when she was in her dream, there's always a deserted house with the door locked, and it was dark all around. So when she approached the deserted house, having the door being locked, she realized that there was a lot of people inside of that house, and they desperately crying for help. And she just don't know what it means. So when she woke up after a few of her dreams that keep being repeated, she went to get help, and her friend introduced her to a Zen master. So after some time of communicating and understanding the root cause of the disease, the uh, the Zen master gave her a golden key and told her that the next time she had this dream, she should unlock the door and just free all the people inside of the deserted house. So nightfall, the girl went to sleep, and she got dragged right back to her dream. And it was that same familiar sense, the same the familiar environment where it was on dark, it was at night, and there it is, the deserted house presented itself right in front of her. But this time she know what to do. She know what she was supposed to do. She looked down, and she was so happy that the golden key that the Zen master gave her is now with her. She can do something about it. So the girl quickly went to the door, and then she put the key in the lock, which is right there. Like, she was so curious because she know that there was a lot of people in there, but she doesn't know exactly what is inside of the house. So in that moment of doubt, she took a peek to see what is inside of that house. And she saw that inside of the house there was many people, many of the familiar face of the people who had hurt her in her life, including the neighbor who recently moved in next to her house, and even the old childhood dog from when she was in school, the one that bit her when she was young. So she thought to herself, like, why would I release these people when they was the one who hurt me? And she held on to that thought and she made the decision that she is going to not unlock the door. She's going to turn around and walk away. She will actually have a faint a smile on her her lips, waking up from her dream. And then after that, her her health did not improve at all, but it actually getting worse until she could no longer enduring the pain. She could no longer endure the illness, and she went back to the Zen master again, asking for help, asking for advice. The Zen master then told her that this is so urgent, there's no time left. She told her that she needed to free those people right away, or the deserted house would collapse. And that is the equivalent, meaning that her health would also collapse. And between the decision of life and death, and she can no longer afford hesitation, the girl made up her mind that, you know what, this time when I get back to the dream, and hopefully it will be tonight, I will not hesitate and I will open the door and I will free all of the people inside of the house. And by some miracle chance that night, the girl is back to her dream, the dream that she had seen many times in the past, with the same scenario, you know, dark sky, deserted house with some flickering light inside. And the girl, without hesitation, ran to the door, take out of the golden key, and unlock the lock right away. Not only that, she she quickly helped the people to get out of the house, and everybody ran out of the doors. And there's a sense of release to the girl because she feel like she did it, you know. She finally feeling better as each of the people in the house who were the people that hurt her in the past ran out of the house. She felt much better. But then she's out of the sudden she recognized that there was another person in the corner of the room. For some reason, that person is not getting up. That person is just sitting down facing the corner of the house. And the girl quickly helped that person. And as soon as she was able to help the person get out of the house, then immediately the house collapsed. But what surprised her the most was not the collapse of the house. What surprised the girl the most is that the person that the girl helped from the very corner of the deserted house was, in fact, herself, with the same look and everything. And that strange encounter kind of pushed her out of her dream. And waking up from that dream, all of a sudden, her health had changed and it gradually improved. But it was still so puzzling to the girl that she didn't understand why it is that she herself is in the room. So the girl went to see the Zen master again. And the Zen master explained to her that in life, she had blamed herself for other people's mistake. for having lacked of compassion for other and for herself. So being compassion of others is actually the simplest way to save one future. And that is the end of the story. And the moral of the story is when it's come to compassion, a lot of time, because the definition that we learn from forgiveness, we we feel like we have the power to forgive others, so that over time people thought reside in us get reduced, and we we think that we are doing other people a favor, while in fact, with true compassion, where we understand that it is human nature to make a mistake. They might not do it on purpose, and it is important to have compassion for them, and most importantly, having compassion for other is having compassion for oneself. That is, in the case of the girl, it is important for her to have compassion for other, so she can save herself. And this is one of the most important lesson that I would like you to learn from today's presentation. And I would love to hear your thought and your lesson on this as well while we are diving in deeper. So feel free to raise your hand if you would like to interact, because doing that we will learn much better. And I will continue and to share my lesson from this, because I do have the lesson that I feel very much having a deep understanding of this. So compassion is very, very special. We only scratching the surface. Having compassion is having compassion for ourselves, just like the girl. Imagine, okay, if let's say I'm holding a pen on my hand right now. It's not too bad, it's not too heavy. I can hold on to this pen for a couple of minutes. But imagine if you have to hold on to this pen for an hour. How would you feel? Your hand will get sore, right? What if you have to hold on to this one pen for an entire day? Then you might not be able to do it. But what you can do is you can put it in your pocket. In fact, you can have more pen on your pocket. But eventually it will get too heavy. It will be such a burden to having to hold on to these weight, and it will be harder to move around. So emotion is kind of similar in that way. When someone doing something wrong to you, and it creates a negative emotion, if you were to hold on to it, it is very similar to holding on to a pen or pencil. And if we cannot learn to forgive other people, it is the equivalent of keep holding on to more weight and more weight over time. In the case of the girl, she didn't realize that in her years of living, she she never forget people. She always remember what other people did wrong to her. Even the little dog that bit her when she was younger, she couldn't even forgive the dog. And all of that weight, all of that negative emotion is drag on and it's directly influence her health. And that is something that I realized recently in the past year when I have learned about compassion, because practicing compassion is very, very powerful. It is not about forgiving other people. It is about loving yourself. It is about the realization that there is more than just the material. We have to realize that there is an immaterial world, that everything is interconnected. The thing that other people do have done wrong throughout our life, even though we might not able to touch it, to feel it with our touch, but obviously we can feel it through our emotion, and that have great influence on our life. So understanding that, we can develop a better understanding of how the world works through compassion. Because with compassion, just like the girl, we will learn to release release all negativity in our life, release all of the people who have done wrong to us, and most importantly, the person in the corner of the house who is ourself. It is important to release ourselves from the decision that we might have made in the past. This is something that I found more common, and even me myself, I experienced this in my past, because obviously it's not always like sunshine and rainbow. There's a bad day. Everybody has a bad day, and many times when we look back in our past, we often tell ourselves that I wish I could have done it differently. I wish I could have done B instead of A, or like the Matrix reference. Maybe Neo should have just take that blue pill rather than the red pill. So often we we usually live in the past, and we tend to think about our regret. But with compassion, we can let that go. And another beautiful thing about compassion is that people often worry about the future. They're worrying about what they are going to eat tomorrow, how are they going to plan their next vacation, or what is the next move to get a better job, to make more money. And people tend to look toward the future with anxiety, and they're starting to worry. And with compassion, we can learn how the world works, and we can let go of the worry. And there is actually many ways that we can practice and acquire compassion. But the first step that we should do is just like the girl. We need to forgive ourselves. We need to learn about a term called self-clinging. So self-clinging in Vietnamese is called sĩ thân. So self-clinging is it's like attaching a position or a status or an identity to oneself. And we mistakenly believe oneself to be that person and constantly living with it. From the perspective of life, self-clinging can be called a cause or the root of all suffering. And at the same time, it is the biggest obstacle for human beings like us. And of course, I didn't learn about this definition until recently, until the past year. But sometime in my adult life, I got to learn this principle. So back when I was in my 20s, I like to read a lot of self-help book. I like to learn from many gurus. And there's this one quote that literally changed my life. Um, the guru said that going to university and pick a major is just a big trap, because when people decide to choose a major, they decided that that is all they do with their entire life. And they work hard with school for 4 years. They might even like get higher education. And they work all their life in that profession. And that in itself is the definition of self-clinging. A doctor who calls himself a doctor, that would be all that he does. A lawyer who calls himself a lawyer, that is all he knows. Or a realtor who help other people buy house or sell house, that's all that he knows. But if we were to look back in a period of time where, let's say for real estate in 2008, the the market collapsed. And I have heard of family where both the husband and wife work in real estate and they couldn't make money because they were self-clinging. They are attached to a position, a status, an identity. And because of that, they suffer. They suffer when life is no longer going in their way. But if they can learn not to self-clinging, if they can learn to have compassion for themselves, just like how the girl had compassion for herself, she releasing herself, she unclinging to the mistake of others, she's unclinging herself to her old self and giving herself an opportunity to becoming someone even greater. So compassion is very, very powerful. This is just an introduction to what the word actually means. And we do have 5 minutes. So if you have any question or would like to interact, we could. If not, let me share with you a secret about compassion, because compassion in itself is just the beginning. If you can learn to dissociate yourself with self-clinging, if you can learn to be truly compassionate with yourself, truly compassionate with others, you will reach a level where you will have a clear understanding of how the universe works. Just like what we have discussed just now, we learned that it is not other people's fault. It is not our fault. It is life as a whole, because everything interconnected. People do what they do because of the situation, because the environment because of fate. And understanding compassion, understand how the world works, it will be easier for us to have compassion for ourselves and having compassion for others. And the beauty of it is that you will be able to get closer to be at peace with compassion. And this is the many reasons that people are literally in love with the word compassion. So just a quick recap before we end the presentation. So what is compassion? Compassion, in simple terms, is the highest level of the virtue of forgiving. Compassion is when someone presumably making a mistake that should have affected you, but because you are protected with compassion, because you have compassion for other, it has absolutely no effect. You see absolutely no fault in others. And the difference between compassion with three other level of forgiveness that are known to us. First is the virtue of forgiveness. When someone doing something wrong, we can feel it 100%, 10 out of 10. We know exactly that they did something wrong. But because we are a forgiving person, over time, that mistake, that fault got reduced to 6 or 7 parts. And I'm going back to this definition because this is the way to learn how to be compassionate. You don't have to wake up and have compassion right away. We can work on it. I can work on it. I can learn to be more forgiving. I can start with forgiveness. When I see someone doing something wrong, I give myself permission to be human. I give myself the permission to have the emotion of blaming them for all of their fault. But I learned that giving it some time when my emotion cooling down, then their fault only reside in me 6 to 7 parts. And when after I learned that, I can move to another level of tolerance. So this time around, when that same person making the same mistake, instead of the 10 part, I am now more tolerant to other mistakes. Automatically, I only see 6 to 7 part of people fault. And then over time, because of my level of tolerance, the 6 to 7 part has got reduced to only 4 and 5. It's reduced in half. And once I reach that tolerance level, I can live my life using altruism. So as the person with the virtue of altruism, when someone happens to do something wrong, I only see half of it, not even half of what they did wrong. Let's say I am the boss and my employee going to work late. Automatically, I'm thinking about traffic. Because of traffic, my employee is late. They didn't meant to do it. Automatically cut it in half. Something happened to cause that fault. Automatically cut it in half. And then over time, I don't even think about it. I feel like I forgive them already. But deep down, if we look further, if we were to be reminded of the mistake, 1 or 2 out of 10 part is still there. And this is amazing. Most people don't even know how to forgive. If you can live your life as a person with the virtue of altruism, you will be very close to compassion. So when someone do something wrong, you only know that they they did something wrong. But importantly, it does not affect you at all. There is no effect. And that, my friend, is when you have compassion. And we all need to practice it because having compassion to ourselves is extremely, extremely important. All right. So we have reached that 1 hour mark. Thank you so much for joining us today, for being here. I know it has been a while, and I have been busy, but I truly missed sharing these knowledge in English very much, and I love to see some new faces here. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I will do my very best to continue in this journey every week. And thanks again. And I will see you next week. All right. Bye bye, everybody.